that God has shaped for us. God shaped the picture for us. You know, and God tells us that He doesn't do anything without a reason. There's nothing without a purpose but the one who created the life. So there's a reason why we've gone through what we've gone through, and we're here today. God has brought those who are on the bottom and put them on the top. Top. There was a concept that I would push in the military called TOPS. And it would say those who have the T, with T-O-P-S. Those that God blessed with the talent, when given the opportunity, would perform in such a way they would guarantee them success. Isn't that our picture? That's our picture. You know, when the president returned from his trip to Africa, he took his children, and they visited the areas, the door of no return, etc. You know, if you had a chance to look at him speaking to the African American leaders when he returned, I mean, he was so inspired by what he witnessed and what he shared. I mean, he was sounding really, you can hear it like he was just a spiritual teacher. And he was telling them what they need to do. The African American leaders, they're speaking just for them. And he was saying what we need to do to qualify, to keep our community together, to go forward. You know, he's America's president. He's not just the black president. He's not the white president. He's the president of the United States of America. But he shared with us what we need to do as a people. As a people. He's given us the guidance. And he said, education. He's speaking to the group of African American leaders. Now we know many of them are shameless today with the way they're speaking about him. Because they're just really trying to see their life lived. Not the life of the country or the people, but just their own life. They're shameless. But he told them, he said, that education is the qualifier. You have to be learning, you have to get knowledge. You have to know. And not only that, then you have to teach and share what you know in the community. That's what he told them. But many, again, they shame us because they're not doing that. They're not in the communities doing what he said they should do. They're looking for opportunities to say that he is not focusing on me. They don't say it like that. When they say African American, they're saying it. He's sharp. He's sharp. Allah has blessed him. Allah has really blessed him. God has blessed him, and God is with him, and we see it. The common people see it because of what he represents. But we are thankful to him, and we're thankful that we have with us part of his team, a dynamic member of his team. Again, he has a big portion of the public, the person that's here with us. You know, this outreach, this public engagement. The common people, I mean, he's out really, that's a big job. That's a big job. To gain and to engage the masses of the people. To partake and be involved in the fullness of the American life. And like the Imam said, to build upon their citizenship rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you Mr. Paul Montero.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction to Imam Sharif. And I want to start by just saying, answering a question I know is on, I think, every person's mind in this room. It's a serious question. How old am I? I'm 30, just to put that. If the president can release his birth certificate to prove his citizenship, I can tell you how old I am. I won't complain about it. But it's an honor to be here with you this evening. As Imam Sharif mentioned, I work in the Office of Public Engagement at the White House. Our job, working for the President and Valerie Jarrett, is to be in touch with leaders around the country, communities around the country on every issue that they care about. My role in the office is to lead outreach to the religious community, to religious leaders around the country, of all different persuasions, all different backgrounds. And as you can imagine, it's it's a large responsibility because so many Americans believe in God, whatever they know Him as. And I want to thank Brother Wallace and Imam Sharif and Imam Muhammad for spending time with me earlier today, because working with the African American Muslim community is a passion of mine, because it's important to the President. Sometimes to explain what it is we do in the White House, I tell a story. Does anyone here know how the White House got its name, the White House? Anyone know? White. Because it's white? That's usually the guess I get. The story of how the White House got its name was early in the 20th century. Theodore Roosevelt became president after President McKinley was assassinated. And before he was president, he was the governor of New York. And when he was governor of New York, he often had Booker T. Washington over to dinner at the governor's mansion. Everyone knows Booker T. Washington. And so when he became president, he did the exact same thing and invited Booker T. Washington to come to dinner at the White House. At that time, it was called the Palace, or the President's House. And President Roosevelt invited Booker T. Washington to sit down to dinner with him, Mrs. Roosevelt, and their daughter. And the very next day, the reaction from the South was so violent that a president would invite an African American to sit with him and a white woman and their daughter in the palace. The reaction was so violent and so negative. The very next day, President Roosevelt designated it the White House. And I mentioned that story because that's part of the history. And it's part of the history that we have to remember. History is one of those things. It depends on who writes it. But we have to remember the negative parts of our history if we are to do better in the future. And a lot of what we do in the White House is dealing with the narratives that are out there, the stories that are out there. And as you can imagine, we know, as well as you do, if we're talking about the African American community, the story is tough right now. So many people in our community are hurt, struggling to pay their rent, their mortgage, keep their job, or to find another job. The story is tough. But if you watch the news, you think all hope is gone. If you talk to people, like I do and like we do all the time, we know so many people still support the president because they know where his heart is. My job isn't to give political speeches or anything like that, but the facts are the facts, and we talked about this in our meeting beforehand. The health care bill that we got through resulted in 7 million more African Americans having health coverage today. This isn't hypothetical. In terms of minority business contracting, of this, we have almost $3.6 billion going to African American owned firms today. In terms of historically black colleges and universities, they have $1 billion in mandatory funding over the next decade. And these are all things that I just mentioned because if you were to watch the story you're being told in the news and in the media, it's a whole different reality. And the reality, too, is different when we're talking about the American Muslim community. The story there, in many ways, couldn't be worse. The polling that we see, the stories that we hear, the people that we meet tell us that 10 years after 9/11, the community is in a very vulnerable position. And I think everyone in this room knows, on every occasion, and even occasions where it might not be called for, the President has stepped up and embraced the American Muslim community. Where there were people saying, just don't say anything, let it go, let it happen. As recently as the iftar that we were happy to have Imam Sharif celebrate with us on August 10th. Looking back at the State of the Union address earlier this year, there was only one community that got a specific mention, and the President mentioned the American Muslim community needing to know they're part of our American family. There is no less than that. And so our job is to tell that story. And it's easy when people say American Muslims are a threat to our national security. That's our story right there. Imam Sharif, 30 years of service in the military. Yes. It's easy when people say, Islam oppresses women. When you look around this room to see how many talented, beautiful, accomplished women are.